Okay, and we're going to start streaming now. All right. So, Hare Krishna. Welcome to this week's Sunday Feast program. On behalf of Sri Sri Kishore Kishore and Srila Prabhupada, big welcome to our virtual Sunday Feast participants. A few quick announcements before we continue on with the next portion of our program. The first is, you may have noticed if you received the temple emails that we are having a Ratha Yatra. And so it's exciting, and it's really amazing that some of the devotees were inspired to find a way to still have this annual tradition, even amidst these current times of COVID-19. So there is registration required in order to participate in this Ratha Yatra. It's going to be taking place at the ISKCON Chicago Temple. So to be able to reserve a spot, as well as find out how you can get involved or sponsor, please visit iskonchicago.com. There is a section on the website dedicated to this festival. And again, this festival is next Sunday. So Lord Jagannath, Baldev, and Subhadra will be there, of course, to participate, and you'll have the opportunity to pull their cart. So it's a really incredible act, and big thanks to everyone who's working together to make this happen. Next, I would like to introduce, also just a reminder, the temple visiting hours are Saturday from 4 until 6:30 p.m. That's 4 p.m. to 6:30 p.m. And Sundays, normally, it's from 3 to 6:30 p.m. Though with the Ratha Yatra next Sunday, the slots are available from 9 a.m. until 5 p.m. So the hours are a little different. But again, please register in advance. Nobody with only those with a reservation will be allowed into the temple room during that time. And please come at your assigned time slot. Next, I'll turn it over to tonight's speaker, His Grace Nityananda Pran Prabhu, who is talking about absence makes the heart grow fonder. And this is a continuation of our Srimad Bhagavatam Brilliant as the Sun series, where we are highlighting one chapter every week. And so he's going to be taking us through the 12th chapter of Srimad Bhagavatam with this topic. So I'll turn it over to you formally. Thank you so much. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Welcome, everyone. I hope you're having a good Sunday so far. And Yashodhanandan has been encouraging us to pursue or follow the Srimad Bhagavatam, Brilliant as the Sun. So we're going through summarizing chapter by chapter each Sunday. And I happen to be the fortunate one to get chapter 11. And so what I thought I will do is summarize the chapter and highlight a couple of verses from the chapter and give us a little insight into the beautiful rasa that Krishna and Krishna's devotees in Dwaraka enjoy and exchange between each other. So with that, let's get started. Om Ajnanatimirandhasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshur Unmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamahyam Dadati Swapadantikam. Vancha kalpatarubhyascha kripa sindhubhya evacha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shrivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So I'm going to share with you a PowerPoint. I'll walk you through some slides, and so this chapter of Krishna returning to Dwaraka is very sweet. And if you look at the first canto, up until chapter before this, up until chapter 10, the topics are about what's happening at that point in time in the Mahabharata, I guess, if you will. the Pandavas and Parikshit Maharaj, who's become the king. He's been saved in the womb by Lord Krishna. And then it almost suddenly shifts, the entire attention shifts to a whole juicy topic. One is Krishna is leaving the company of the Pandavas in Hastinapura. That's chapter 10. And chapter 11 is that he's entering Dwaraka. So last week, Ajita spoke on how to heal a broken heart, because Krishna was leaving Hastinapur, the Pandavas, and they all felt heartbroken that Krishna was leaving them. And now Krishna is about to enter Dwaraka, which is chapter 11. And so all this while that Krishna was elsewhere, what happened to the residents of Dwaraka? They were feeling the absence of Krishna. And one of the things about absence is the person who we love, and I'm going to keep it specifically to Krishna. So Krishna's devotees, in the absence of Krishna, their heart becomes even more intensified with feelings of love and affection for Krishna. So although Krishna is not present in front of them per se, their hearts and minds, even for a moment, cannot forget Krishna, because they're constantly thinking about when will Krishna return and when will I be with Krishna. So absence makes the heart grow fonder. Let me see this works. So before we look into what's happening in the lives of the different residents of Dwaraka, let's step back and appreciate something about Krishna. And to be able to get an appreciation for these kinds of loving emotions in relation to Krishna, it is important to make a study of a book called Nectar of Devotion. In English, in Sanskrit, it's called Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. And in that book, Rupa Goswami begins with calling Krishna as Akhila Rasamrita Murti. So we're going to take each word and then sort of get a little appreciation. This is like orientation. Before we start a new job, before we start a new course, before we start a new training program, whatever there is some orientation required. So referring to Nectar of Devotion gives a little orientation. So Akhila Rasa Amrita Murti. Murti means the form or personality. And Krishna is the personification of Rasamrita. Rasa is the joy, the experience of enthrallment or ecstasy in relation to Krishna and Krishna's devotees. And because Krishna can have an individual relationship with all living beings throughout creation in such a way that each entity feels completely nourished by him, he is called Akhila Rasamrita Murti. Just as a comparison, any one of us, we cannot exchange to the fullest possible extent loving exchanges with anybody and everybody we meet. It's not possible. Our love, our capacity, our interest in others most likely is bound by time and place. So if we move from one place to another, we form new relationships, and some old relationships, some of them we can keep, but not all of them. With time, we forget, we move on to other things. Those who were my friends when I was a child may not be my friends today, and I cannot connect with them to the fullest extent possible. But Krishna is one personality that every living being, and when we speak on this, I usually try to give a context. When you say, how many living beings are there in North America? And the answer is unlimited. Just in North America, unlimited living beings. Not just human beings, unlimited living beings. So how many are there on the planet Earth? Multiply that by another unlimited number. Now, how many living entities are there in this universe? Just unfathomable number. How many living entities are there across all material universes? I can't even comprehend. Then what to speak of how many living beings there are in entire creation, of which this material aspect is only 1/4 of it. So every living being in the entire spiritual realm, in the entire material realm, down to every species, has a very unique relationship with Krishna, and Krishna reciprocates with them to the fullest extent that they can appreciate. Therefore, he is called Akhila Rasamrita Murti. Now, if he can reciprocate like that with even the bugs and the worms and the animals and the trees and birds and animals, human beings, demigods, what to speak of the kind of exchanges Krishna will have with those who are very intimate with him, his friends, his relatives, his parents, his lovers, etc. That is the appreciation we get a glimpse of in chapter 11. And I guess framing it or getting an appreciation of it, while he is Akhila Rasamrita Murti, Krishna's absence in his physical form can be compensated by the presence of his name. Because not everyone can access Krishna's form in time and place. For example, we are all sitting in our own homes or wherever we are, and we are unable to access Krishna, Kishori's form by being in the temple. It's just the nature of how things are right now. But that does not mean that Kishori are not accessible to us. They're accessible in the form of their name. So this verse, Nama Chintamani Krishnas Chaitanya Rasa Vigraha Purna Shuddho Nitya Mukto Abhinnatvam Nama Namina. That Krishna is our form is made of bones, flesh, mucus, pus, blood, etc. In the Vedic system, there are 7 dhatus or 7 elements that make up a body. What is Krishna's body made up of? It's not blood and sweat and pus and marrow, nothing like that. His body is made up of Chaitanya Rasa. Chaitanya Rasa is the ingredient or the element of love. And full love with full cognition of Krishna's completely being mine and I being Krishna's. So this Chaitanya Rasa, and he's that Vigraha, he's the form of that love. Krishna, whichever aspect of his body or form you take, is nothing but pure love. And so he and his holy name naturally are eternally and completely pure and not affected by the material modes of nature. And therefore he and his name are non-different. To appreciate this verse and to appreciate the previous Akhila Rasamriti Murti concept, Rupa Goswami tells us that Krishna has relationships with everybody in 5 primary categories. Shanta means neutral appreciation. Dasya is where a person offers oneself to Krishna as his servant. Whatever Krishna says, Krishna is their master, whatever Krishna does as well. Now, generally we say Dasya is something easy, but in a worldly sense, at a practicing level, many of us accept Krishna as our master. In fact, Krishna always accepts us as his servant, but it takes time for us to accept Krishna as our master. And we accept him as our master as long as he is doing things for us in a way that we like. And the time that he doesn't do it the way we like, then our being his servant becomes questionable. So Dasya is not so easy, but definitely closer to Krishna in intimacy. Then is Sakhya. Sakhya means friendship. Krishna is no more a master, but almost an equal. Then Vatsalya. Vatsalya is higher, where Krishna is not equal, but Krishna is inferior. Krishna takes orders from his parents. And Madhurya is even more intimate because Krishna not only takes orders, but he dances like a puppet in the hands of the gopis who have this conjugal affection for him. Now, these 5 relationships have varieties of exchanges. And these exchanges are in the feature of these 7 secondary rasas. These 7 secondary, they facilitate the exchanges with Krishna. So, for example, they're listed as hasya. Hasya is humor, where Krishna laughs, and there are even the hasya. Now, I don't want to get into it, but there are grades. One is called smita, where Krishna only smiles. Then is called hasya, where Krishna laughs and you can only see the 2 teeth in his mouth. And then there is prahasa, where he laughs with you can see all his teeth and his body shaking, his shoulders are shaking. That means he's having a great time. That is hasya. Adbhuta is being wondered in wonderment. Wow, what is Krishna doing? That's amazing. Where Krishna amazes his devotees. Bhaya, where there are features of fear between or in the exchanges of Krishna and his devotees. For example, when Krishna jumped onto Kalya, the serpent, Mother Yashoda, although in Vatsalya, became fearful for her son. Or when the boys of Vrindavan walked into Aghasura's mouth, for a moment Krishna became fearful for what would happen to them. Next is called Bhibhatsa. Bhibhatsa is ghastly, where there is blood, murder, mayhem. When Krishna kills certain demons, you'll see in the Bhagavatam, the descriptions are very gory. Then Raudra, there is anger. When Krishna's devotees are offended, or Krishna's very dear friends, like in Vrindavan, when Indra sent torrential rains out of anger, Krishna also lifted up the Govardhan hill to teach Indra a lesson. Then there is Karuna. Karuna means compassion or melancholy. When Krishna leaves Vrindavan, all the residents of Braja, they pathetically cry. They fall on the ground. They cannot breathe. They cannot eat. They cannot sleep. They just are completely out of their minds that Krishna has left them. And then Veera. Veera is chivalrous. When he's killing the demons or he wants to impress Radharani or any of the gopis, then he shows some chivalrous pastimes that win the hearts of the gopis, or in any of these rasas, there is chivalry there. Now, if you study chapter 49 onwards of Nectar of Devotion, Rupa Goswami describes how these rasas mix. Some rasas mix well and some cannot mix. And if they seem to mix, then it causes what is called rasa bhasa. It's like putting sweet rice on pizza. They don't mix well. Okay. So these 5 and 7 together facilitate a whole bunch of sweet pastimes of Krishna that we as readers get to appreciate. Now, in Krishna's relationships with his conjugal associates, like the damsels of Vrindavan, Radharani, and all the gopis, etc., and the queens of Dwaraka, 16,108. There is one feature of that love that is called Vipralambha. There are 2 aspects of conjugal love. One is called Sambhoga, that is the meeting. And Vipralambha is the separation, where Krishna is not there with them. So this separation, Vipralambha, is of 3 features. One is called Purva Raga. The word Purva means previous. So Purva Raga, or previous, or before. So the attraction towards Krishna before meeting him the very first time, the sense of separation, the anticipation that I will get to meet Krishna for the first time. That is Purva Raga. Then, having been with Krishna, Krishna does or says certain things by which his conjugal associates become upset with him. That is called mana. They have transcendental anger and they walk away from Krishna. And then there is the beauty of it. It's called the separation in anger, where Krishna comes to pacify these devotees. For example, in Dwaraka, Satyabhama manifests a lot of mana pastimes. Then there is the third one called Pravasa. The word Vasa means to stay together. Like one of the names that is going to come up later of Krishna is Srinivasa, where Shri, that is Lakshmi Devi, is always residing on his chest. Srinivasa. So Pravasa means anticipation of meeting again now that they had separated. So when Krishna was in Dwaraka for a very long time, all the queens enjoyed his company very much. And then Krishna leaves and goes to Hastinapur. And while he's gone away, meeting other devotees and other relatives, the queens are completely shattered. Their hearts are broken. They're constantly waiting for Krishna to come back. And that is called Puravasa. They're always at the window looking, is there any indication that Krishna is returning? That is called Pravasa. So this chapter 11 is primarily Pravasa. It ends with Pravasa. So this is how the chapter begins. Suta Goswami explains, or he says, Anartan sa upavrajya svriddhan janapadan sakan dadmau daravaram tesham vishadam shamayan eva. That Krishna is returning from Hastinapur and he is just about to enter Dwaraka. So what Krishna does before entering Dwaraka, so the word for Dwaraka in this verse is Anarta, because the region where Dwaraka is called the region of Anarta. So Anarta sa upavrajya. Upavrajya means having reached. Svruddhan Janapadan Swakan. He has reached this Dwaraka, which is very, very abundantly gifted. Svruddhan Janapadan, the capital city. Swakan, Krishna's own place of residence. So Krishna picks up his conch, the Panchajanya, and blows it loudly, heralding his arrival. Dadmau Daravaram Tesham. And the blowing of the conch had such a wonderful effect that Suta Goswami says the effect that it had is that all the residents of Dwaraka who were completely in distress or in dismay, Vishadam, Shamayan was pacified. Their hearts were pacified by Krishna's, by the sound of the Panchajanya. And we know the word Vishada because in Bhagavad Gita it starts with Arjuna Vishada, Arjuna's despondency. So their despondency was completely taken care of by Krishna's blowing the conch. Now, why should Krishna blow his conch? He could have just arrived. But it's never that great personalities don't arrive without some indication of their arrival. So every day, the great personality, the sun, Surya Dev, before he shows up, there is a whole bunch of light that shows up. And that light is called Anshuman, the twilight period. And when you see twilight, you know the sun is about to rise. So similarly, Krishna arrives by first giving a sound indication that he's about to arrive. Like in a temple, if the curtains are closed, we're about to do an arati, you get everyone's attention by blowing the conch. So everybody knows, oh, we're going to see Krishna now. So all the citizens of Dwaraka became so enchanted and they suddenly got up as if they got up from some stupor. Now this picture is not the residents of Dwaraka, this picture is the residents of Japan. But the idea is all the residents got very busy. That's the best picture I could convey to you, that the crowds of people got together and they did something. Then he says, Tam upashrutya ninadam. Upashrutya means they heard it. As soon as they heard ninadam, the sound of the conch, Jagat Bhaya Bhayavaham. The sound was such that the greatest of fears can be taken away from their heart, from anyone's heart. Pratyudyayuhu prajah sarvaha. All the residents, sarva, every resident. Now it says praja, that means human beings, animals, birds, they all turned towards the sound. And the sound was from Bhartar Darshana Lalasaha. Bhartu, the word Bharta literally means husband. So Krishna was their husband. The very literal meaning of Bhartar means the one who maintains them. So Krishna was their maintainer. And Darshana Lalasaha, they were very, very eager to see him. They knew Krishna's arriving. So they all were in full attention. They got up. Now I'm going to digress for a moment and share with you one of my favorite verses. This is a verse that is an important verse for devotees to appreciate and pray to Krishna the way Draupadi prayed. When Draupadi was in distress in the forest, that Durvasa Muni with the 60,000 disciples had arrived and she didn't know what to do. She prayed to Krishna and Krishna was arriving to meet her from a distance, and the very sign of his arrival brought great joy to her heart. And she says, she compares Krishna to many, many wonderful things, and we'll see in this verse. She says, my dear Krishna, you are like, and then here are all how he is like. First, Tamasi Ravir Iva, Ravir Udayan Iva. Ravi is the sun. That's why the picture of the sun. That when the sun is rising, he dissipates all the darkness. So the fear of darkness, the cold of the night, and the ignorance of darkness is removed by the sun. So Krishna's arrival is the way the sun rises to dissipate darkness. So that's the first one. Ravir Udayan Iva. Second, Majjatam Aplavanam Plava Iva. Majjatana means someone who is drowning in a body of water. Aplavanam, and they have no boat to rescue them. Krishna is like the boat that comes to rescue a drowning person. That's the second one. Third one, Trushtanam Swadu Varsha Iva Megha. Trushta means one who is thirsty. And a thirsty person will not eat. They only want fresh water to drink. So Krishna is like the Megha, the cloud that is filled with rainwater. So he gives hope. In the first one, he gives light and he gives illumination. In this one, he gives hope. Swadu Varshiva. Swadu means very tasty rainwater. Megha iva. Then Nidhir iva Nidhanam. Nidhanam means one who's very impoverished. One has no wealth. To such a person, Krishna is Nidhir. He is wealth or abundance. So Krishna is Krishna is the one who enlightens, one who saves their lives, one who gives hope, and one who fills someone's life with abundance. And then Tivra Dukkha Bhishag Iva Kushalam. So Tivra Dukkha Bhishag. Bhishag is disease. So one who is diseased and in severe distress, to them Krishna is Kushalam, like a doctor. So he is the one who heals. So you see in different ways how Krishna takes care of all of us. So Draupadi is saying, Nah, unto us, Datum Ayati. This great Krishna, Shauri, the great warrior of great opulence and great fame, Shauri, has arrived. In the same way, the residents of Dwaraka felt. Very beautiful verse. So here's a summary of the chapter. Verses 1 to 3, which I read two of them to you, heralds Krishna's arrival. Texts 4 through 10 tell us how the citizens of Dwaraka receive Krishna. So if you can see, I'm trying to identify, there is a progression of relationships. And in those progressions, the intensity of exchanges increases. Okay. And the most intimate devotees see Krishna last. Krishna gives his darshan to the general people first. So sometimes devotees who've been practicing for a long time, we wonder, young people who are just coming to Krishna consciousness, practicing for 1 month or less, they're chanting Hare Krishna and they have all these beautiful realizations, but I don't see the same in my heart. What is it that I'm doing that's wrong? Nothing wrong. Krishna arrives first and meets the citizens. I'm not saying that I'm necessarily more intimate with Krishna. It's just that depending upon how one has more intensity or more closeness with Krishna, Krishna does not necessarily reveal himself so freely. And what is surprising here is the citizens of Dwaraka, they touch Krishna, they look at him so in close quarters, but his own queens don't meet him like that. So from text 11 through 15 tells us how the city of Dwaraka is decorated for receiving Krishna. So indirectly, the city is receiving Krishna. Then text 16 through 27, how the relatives and friends of Krishna receive him in Dwaraka. So remember the rasas, the Shanta, Dasya, Sakhya, and Vatsalya. Then in text 28 and 29, Krishna meets his parents. And then text 30 to 39, Krishna first meets his children and then his queens. So let's see how the residents of the citizens of Dwaraka meet Krishna. They all throng the streets of Dwaraka. And they are besides themselves when they see Krishna. The tradesmen, the shopkeepers, the brahmanas, the ministers, they all rush out to meet him. In fact, even Bhagavatam says even the prostitutes, the singers, the dancers, the drama people, the artisans, everybody throng around Krishna's chariot and they are eager to see him. They fully take him in through their eyes. And I'm going to share that verse with you. Then the city of Dwaraka, here's the city of Dwaraka, the descriptions of how every house, streets, parks, gardens, thresholds of the different official buildings, they were decorated like nobody's business with fresh banana trees or plants, the fresh sprouts of flowers, scented waters, mango leaves. The whole description is there, which I'm saying all this hoping we will study the chapter on our own. Then Krishna's relatives, Balaram and all his other friends of Krishna and the brahmanas, the other brahmanas that are inside the hall, Sudharma hall, they all run out to meet Krishna. When Krishna meets them, depending upon their age and status, Krishna either offers them obeisances or shakes hands with them or gives them an embrace, and some of them offer their obeisances to Krishna. Then when Krishna enters the palace, he meets his parents, Vasudev, Devaki, and other persons who are like his parents, that he looks up to them and they look to him as his child, as their child. And then finally, he comes to meet his queens. And 16,108 queens are anxiously waiting to see him. And the Bhagavatam describes that they get up and they run to see him. But as soon as they see him at a little distance, their feminine shyness stops them. And they lower their faces and they encourage their sons to go forward and embrace Krishna, because their shyness does not allow them to embrace Krishna in public. So they send their sons, and I'm going to share with you those verses. Now, before Krishna enters his palace, sorry, I went ahead of myself. There's a beautiful verse. I talked about Srinivasa. The residents of Dwaraka look at Krishna and say, Shriya Nivasa Yasya Uraha. Yasya Uraha. Uraha is chest. On whose chest Shri, the goddess of fortune, is eternally present. Pana Patram Mukham Drasham. His face, Kishore's face is here. They drink Krishna's face through their eyes, as if his face is a drinking vessel. Pana patram. Pana is to drink, or a beverage, or the act of drinking. Pana patram mukham drisham bahava lokapalanam. And his arms, although his face is very charming, delicate, his arms are powerful, because by those arms he governs over all the governors of the universe. And saranganam padambujam, and his feet are the shelter of the sarangas. Sarangas are those devotees who are constantly singing and praising his glories. Very beautiful verse. So now back to the queens of Dwaraka. They want to embrace Krishna, but they're unable to. So this is how they embrace him. Shruta Goswami says, Tam Atmajair Drushtibhir Antaratmana. So Atmajair, Krishna is residing in their heart, but they saw him in front of them. Duranta Bhava Parirebhe Patim. That he is the one who is sitting in their heart. So they embraced him in the core of their heart. Niruddhamapi Asravat Ambunetrayor. And only embraced Krishna or exchanged through their eyes. Okay. Although they tried to restrain their feelings, Ashravad means crying, Ambunetrayoho, Vilajjatanam, because of feeling shy, they did not run to embrace Krishna, but they embraced him in their hearts, and through their eyes, they met him, and they could not control their love. It was too strong, so it showed as tears rolling down their cheeks. But they don't want to stop. Okay, they don't want to stop. So they sent their sons to Krishna. So in the purport, Prabhupada explains that this does not violate any rule. So socially, they did not embrace Krishna directly, because socially it's not okay. But spiritually, they embraced Krishna through their eyes, because exchanging love through the eyes is more powerful than exchanging love on the physical realm. What do I know about it? But that's very refined expressions of love. But that's what they did. And Prabhupada said there was no violation in their etiquette. By the son embracing the father is similar to the wife embracing her husband. Only thing is, in a social way, it is equivalent. Prabhupada writes, in a physical or conjugal or sexual way, not equivalent. So the fact that their sons, because the son comes from their body, when the son embraces Krishna, the queens felt that as if they were embracing him. So there, what is wonderful to note here is that their hearts have the fondest love for Krishna. At the same time, they are aware of the social setting, and that social setting checks them from fully expressing that love that is brimming. And because it is brimming, it shows up as tears from their eyes. And that is how they exchange love with Krishna. And the very last verse of the chapter is that Krishna lived with these queens in a very simple sort of way. And these simple women, simple queens, they always thought that, Krishna is so dominated by us. But they are unaware that no one can dominate Krishna. He dominates the all of creation. Tam many re. Many re means they thought. They had this opinion. Abala mudha. They're very simple and not so clever in thinking. Strainam cha anuvratam raha. Strainam cha anuvratam means he was always as if he is henpecked. They would say, Krishna, can you do this for us? And he would do that. So they thought that they were under, he was under their control. Apramana vido bhartur. They were unaware, apramana. There was no evidence to show that it's the contrary. Ishwaram matayo yatha. They thought that Krishna was under their control, just as an atheist thinks that God is under the atheist's control. Or the atheists are unaware of the extent of Krishna's control and glory. Because the atheists basically say, oh, I don't believe in God. And they think that that is okay. So the queens thought, oh, Krishna is an ordinary husband with us. They had no idea of the extent of his power and glory. And he did not allow that power to come and interfere in his love with them. So this chapter is how Krishna comes back and makes that heart that has been waiting and waiting and waiting to see him, that has become intensified. That vessel of their heart is brimming with love in anticipation of seeing him again. So that's the chapter. I want to see if you have any comments, questions, or concerns, or you want to share any reflections, you have any realizations reading this chapter. I would love to hear from you.
Hare Krishna. We have a couple of questions so far.
Okay.
The first one is, a common theme in the reception of Krishna was one of enthusiasm and eagerness, the heart growing fonder in absence. The opposite tendency is absence makes the heart grow forgetful. As those aspiring on this path of Krishna consciousness, how would you recommend we take their example to allow our hearts to grow fonder in Krishna's absence?
When absence makes the heart forget, the symptom or the indication is that the person who's forgotten does not hold as important a place in our life that either we thought they did or they thought we did. But in the case of the residents of Dwaraka, they could not even for a moment forget Krishna. I'll see the contradiction. We as, I shouldn't say we, let's say I, as a practitioner, I have to try very, very, very hard to remember Krishna for a moment. The Dwaraka residents have to try very, very, very hard to forget Krishna for a moment. And it's impossible for me to remember Krishna for a moment, and it's impossible for them to forget Krishna for a moment. So their hearts contain love of a very, very different kind. And they're giving it to us. Sutta Goswami, they're openly talking about their love. I mean, the most intimate loving affection between Krishna and his queens is being discussed in public. I don't think any one of us, of course our lives are not important, but any one of our private lives are not discussed in public. We don't tell anyone, but Krishna's life is discussed. How many queens, how he was, so that we can appreciate what that love is. And hearing these, reading these, gives us insight into and entrance into getting an atomic fraction of that affection. That is enough to brim our hearts with it. So until and unless Krishna becomes the most important person in our lives, possibly that he can be forgotten.
All right. Thank you so much. The next question is, let's see. what is the significance of Krishna giving his darshan last to those most intimate to him?
Because the more they have to wait, the more intense their love grows. So think of it this way: if Krishna hid himself and secretly came to the back door into meeting the queens, and nobody in the kingdom knew that Krishna had come in, is not the same as the queens from their balconies or terraces first heard the conch, then a glimpse of Krishna, and then he is talking to all these people and slowly moving towards meeting them, and the anticipation is growing and growing and growing, and they almost that they cannot wait anymore. It's a way of intensifying that love.
Beautiful. I don't see any other questions in the queue. So if you wanted to take this opportunity either for a statement or if you wanted to elaborate on anything or what you would like to do.
Yeah, sure. I'll go back to one of my favorite verses again, just because I like it. Um, Krishna and Krishna's interactions, Ramachandra's interactions. How can I not say anything, right? These are very, very uh, out there, up there, but also accessible by the very, very generous gift of the disciplic succession. If Prabhupada did not write these verses, or did not put it in English for us, I mean, how many of us would have read Srimad Bhagavatam in Sanskrit? How many of us would have appreciated, oh, even these subject matters are available? If the previous acharyas before Prabhupada did not put it down from one generation to another generation, then how would Prabhupada write it for us? So these great acharyas, they completely dedicated their lives for others. I mean, it's not easy. Living for others is not easy. Actually, living for oneself is not easy. But living for others is very, very difficult. And they gave up their wealth, they gave up their comforts, they gave up all facilities and just focused on writing and recording all these things so that future generations can receive them and get to know Krishna. So that's their contribution. Very grateful that they have done so, that they have given up their comforts to give us, make it accessible for us. So whenever one is in difficulty, this is the book Padyavali is one of my favorite books, and this verse is one of my favorite. In fact, every verse is my favorite, but this one is definitely, because in this, every time I read it, I get newer insights. Tonight, the newer insight was, oh, Draupadi is saying that Krishna, when he enters someone's life, he doesn't enter with just, oh, I'm here. He enters in different ways. He enters like the sun removing darkness. He removes fear. He removes ignorance. Then he comes like a boat and saves us from drowning and suffering the day-to-day miseries of life. Then he comes to relieve our thirst and give us hope, like the cloud comes. Whenever you see a cloud, you're hopeful that now it will rain and the ground that is parched gets some fresh water. Then he comes like wealth and enriches our life. As long as Krishna is not in our lives, how much ever rich we may be, we're still impoverished. But by his presence, however poor we might be, we're very enriched. And finally, whatever is the difficulties, the great diseases that torment the heart, lust, greed, envy, pride, madness, illusion, plus whatever physical diseases, then Krishna is the one who's the doctor. He's the healing person. He's not only the healing herb, but his presence is very healing. And such a person, uh, Draupadi is saying, Datum ayati shauri. Datu means one who gives. May he come to protect us.
Beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing that fantastic presentation on Bhagavatam, Srimad Bhagavatam, chapter 11. Really, really came to life. So thank you so much, especially just given all of your responsibilities to make this time to share that. Very
No, I'm
grateful
very
to you.
honored. Thank you for giving. I had first resisted when you asked me, but when I looked at the chapter, I was like, oh, this is such a wonderful chapter. I'm very fortunate. Somehow I got a chance. I wish I had more time, but between you and me, somehow Krishna facilitated it. So thank you for giving me the opportunity. I hope all of you are safe, and please take advantage of Jagannath Rath Yatra to come, although it is in a very restricted format. Still, come and take darshan of Kishore Kishori, Gaurnitai, Jagannath, Baldev, Subhadra Maharani, especially Prabhupada. And have a wonderful rest of the week. And see you soon. Hare Krishna.